me, relationship building is like truly knowing who you're speaking to, right? Like knowing what their problems are, what their aspirations are, what makes them tick, and then actually helping them solve for that. Because selling isn't actually here, buy my thing, buy my product. Selling is actually, I have something that is going to help you.
You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. We are back to another wonderful episode of the Winning Tactics podcast. I am excited. It is like 8 days to my birthday, so I can't believe we're already there in the year, but it is what it is. But even more exciting than my birthday is my guest today, Deirdre Tshien. I hope I didn't mess that up again.
No, well.
And we're talking relationship selling. This is such an interesting topic to me because I hear so many salespeople talk about, I do relationship selling. And then they turn around and go, hi, my name's Bob. Would you buy my product? And I'm like, that's not relationship selling. I know it's not relationship selling. So today we're totally going to pull back the wool on that, and we are going to drop some serious tips on how to be more effective in relationship selling. Deirdre, welcome to the show. So grateful for you to take some time with us today. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for having me on, Adam. And I don't know if I quite agree that speaking to me is as exciting as it is your birthday. So happy birthday! There you go. Just inject some excitement in there for you. Okay, so I guess a little bit about my background. Where do I start? So I guess I'll give you kind of like the full context, because I find that sometimes this helps to put some color to some of the stuff, how I think about things and how I approach things. So you can probably tell from my accent that I'm not from here. I am actually Australian, and I'm living in New York City right now. So we moved over here about 20-ish months ago, and I am first, I guess my parents were first migrants into Australia. So I grew up in Sydney, moved there when I was a baby, and, in typical Asian style, I don't know if that's politically correct to say, but I'm going to make it because I'm Asian. I grew up with those expectations of being a first migrant child. I had to, the reason why my parents moved to Sydney was to give my brother, I have an older brother, and myself better opportunities, better education, things like that. And so there's always this weight, this expectation of achieving and performing. And so for me, I started getting tutored when I was in second or third grade, I think. Had to go to the best, get into opportunity class, get into the best high school. And then my dad wanted me to become a doctor. Which I did not do, to his disappointment to this day. But what I did do, I kind of negotiated with him, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a law degree. That's kind of like second best. And the reason why I wanted to do a law degree was more so because in Sydney, when you go to university, the law degrees are all double degrees, so you have to do another degree with it. And I really actually wanted to study business. And so that was kind of my foray into learning the business world. It was always something that I was kind of quite fascinated with. And from there, I didn't go into law. I went into banking instead, and very quickly got disillusioned by the whole climbing the corporate ladder thing. I was quite fortunate because even though I was this junior burger, I was put on this really large project. I was sitting in a room with senior executives all the way to the CEO, working on this really high profile, like once in a decade regulatory reform in the banking industry project. But because of that, I also got visibility to, you know, the politics that happens, the back channeling that happens, kind of the person you have to become to climb that corporate ladder. So it was very early on in my career that I was like, I just don't think this is for me either. And I'm like, oh my, what am I going to do? So at the same time, my then boyfriend, now husband, was actually studying a medicine degree, but he was miserable. He was hating it. And so we were both kind of at this crossroads where we were both just like, what are we going to do? We don't really know what we're going to do. And we had just kind of moved out. He was really having fun cooking and particularly baking. And we used to always go to this Italian restaurant just for this chocolate molten lava cake dessert. And he was trying to perfect that dessert for me. And because, you know, I love my desserts, he loves making desserts, I was like, this is potentially the perfect idea. So our first business was actually, we opened a dessert bar called the Choc Pot in Sydney. And we kind of grew that to over 5 locations. We opened a burger restaurant as well. So we have 2 locations there, still operating in Sydney. And then a series of events have happened. We're now in New York City. I now help e-commerce business owners with selling out their products using what I call the live conversion method. And so when you talk about relationship selling, it's really funny because there's this tension of like building these relationships, connecting with people, because all of this is anchored in human connection. You know, balancing that with, well, I have to sell, like, you know, we do have to sell. But how do we not just push product? How do we not, to your point, you know, how do we not just be like, here, buy my thing, here's my link, you know, like because that is not at all how you build any kind of relationships, how you even connect with your audience. And that is fundamental in this day and age, especially online, to be able to master this art of relationship building and human connection.
You know, I love that you step back. One of my favorite things to tell people is people do business with people. You know, and it's absolutely true. I think back to the business that I do with different people and different companies, and everything started with a personal connection to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just so become such a powerful part of my business that I can't imagine trying to do it. When I'm in a space where I have to do it another way, it feels unnatural, kind of awkward.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So before we dive into this, let's first talk about relationships, because I think that's a foundational principle here that a lot of people forget, because or a lot of people don't totally understand. You know, and I say that because I hear people go, yeah, I use relationship selling, but they're the same people, like I said at the front of the show, they're the same people that are saying, here, hi, my name's Bob, I like this, buy my thing, you know, and it's like, and they think that that's relationship selling. So let's start with a foundation. What does building relationships look like truly in sales?
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna this relationship building in it's a little bit different based on the industry that you're in. You know, you might be in the services or coaching industry, and that's going to be very different to when you're in e-commerce, for example, when you're selling products. Because, you know, definitely if you're in services or in your coaching, this is how I think about it, is that you should be spending more one-on-one time, more time really connecting with your customer, because you are selling something high ticket. Now, when I started thinking about how we do this in the e-commerce space online, it's like we still need to bottle up that same human, like connecting with people, building relationships, but we just have to do it a little bit more economically. We have to do it at scale. And that's kind of where the live conversion method comes in. And so, you know, definitely relationship building is like truly knowing who you're speaking to, right? Like knowing what their problems are, what their aspirations are, what makes them tick. And then actually helping them solve for that, you know, because selling isn't actually here, buy my thing, buy my product. Selling is actually, I have something that is going to help you. And that is, you don't even have to sell at that point, right? Like you could just talk about that and they'll be like, yes, please, I want that thing that is going to help me with my problem, or it's going to help me reach my aspirations. So, when you take that kind of one-on-one connection building and then sort of almost scale it back and go, okay, now how do we build this at scale? How do we do this instead of one-to-one? We do it one-to-many. It's still all of the same fundamental principles, everything, but it's just that you are doing it one-to-many. And so I don't know if that quite answers your question, but
it does. It does in a way, because I like how you call out the fact that, the one-to-one is where it starts, which I think is important. And it's about intrinsically learning who they are and what their problem is, right? Because I had a guest on one of my prior shows and we talked a little bit about this, and it was about, you can't take your widget and expect your box and expect them to fit their problem in your box. You have to take and look at their box and fit your widget into their box. And so like the fact that now you're probably the third person that I've had on the show talking about sales methodology and high conversion sales that has said the exact same thing leads me to believe 100% that is like a fundamental part of effective sales. And so I love that you pointed that out, because I think it's intrinsically what people miss a lot of times. I will raise my hand and say I missed that for a long lot of years here before I figured that one out. So
yeah, and I'm going to tell you, like, I don't have a background in sales. Like, I'm going to be super, super honest. I don't have a background in sales at all. In fact, for the longest time, when I was in university, or I guess college, as you guys like to call it here, I was actually working part-time in it was called Harvey Norman in Sydney. I guess it's like the equivalent of like a Best Buy here, maybe. And so I was put on the floor and they were just like, look, go and sell. And I was literally like, I think it traumatized me, because from that moment onwards, I was like, I am never going to sell again, because I had no idea what I was talking about. I felt like I was completely BSing people that I was talking to. Like it was disastrous. And so that's kind of my background in sales, if it gives you any confidence at all. And so, when I kind of went into, I guess I fell into this, I guess, business, into this career. And it's just it's really fascinated me now, because it's really given me a different perspective of like, actually selling doesn't have to be that, I think you said it before, that slimy, that pushy, that, that's actually not what effective sales is. And maybe it was back in the day, but it's definitely not that now, because we just see through all of that, like straight away we see through all of that. And so we have to start with the fun. Like, it's almost like we've gone full circle and gone back to basics, which is like, you need to actually know who you're talking to. And when you do that, and to your point, when you can actually fit your widget or whatever it is that you're selling around them, then you are kind of, you're selling. So I know selling has a bit of a dirty word or dirty connotation around it, but like, you are effectively selling, just without actually the dirty sales part of it. And that's actually what I love to be teaching from a sales perspective, in a sales way. It's like, forget about all the tactics, all those old school sales tactics of like almost where you feel like you're pressuring someone into a sale, and just genuinely care about them. Because if you can genuinely care about them, about a person, then A, they can feel that, and B, people want to work with people who actually care, right? That's that's what we buy into.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was actually having a conversation earlier today about this. And I, basically talking about how we need to shift our strategy, because, at the end of the day, we have a new client in the space and a new contact, and they have different goals than the old contact. And so conversations we were having are no longer effective. I'm like, we just need to shift gears and provide solutions. Like the new client like doesn't really care about the financial side of it. They'll figure out how to make that work. You
Yeah.
know, they just want the problem solved. So we need to find problems and show them to them and then solve them, and
Yeah.
everything is good.
Yeah, exactly. And, I definitely think that what helps with all of this is, definitely we want to find out what the problems are. We want to find out what their goals are. And then specifically, we want to paint that picture for them. And I think that's a really important part as well, because it's one thing to kind of be like, oh, what's your problem, Adam? And, here it is, here I can solve for it. But I need to paint that picture for you about what life could be like. What could life look like when that problem is solved, when you don't have, the whatever it is hanging over you anymore. And I think when you can almost be that visionary for people, then it just shortcuts, because we all buy based on emotion. Like that's the fundamental, like number one sales principle. You've got to tap into the emotions, and part of doing that is actually by painting that picture for them, because who doesn't want to feel XYZ, at a certain point in life? Like we all want that, right? And so if you can actually show that to people, that is how you actually start to sell, but in their context, based on what they want, but based on what they're looking for. Obviously, you have to be able to deliver on that, but that's a given. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of point that out as well as an add-on to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, what's really, really cool about that, I think back to, we all carry one of these guys in our pocket, right? Now. And I think back to Steve Jobs introducing the iPod, probably one of the most pivotal public presentations in modern history. When we look at technology, and he did exactly that. He played on emotion, sold the story, and sold the dream. And now, 20 plus years later, everybody carries essentially that device or a device like it in their pocket to do the same thing, and it's like that right there tells you that when you sell to their needs and paint that picture and paint that story, it really truly can work.
100%.
So let's pause for just a moment. I want to thank my affiliate partner, Cowork Hub Virtual. They're giving consultants, coaches, freelancers, and solopreneurs a sense of place in a remote work world. Super, super cool platform. It is a virtual office platform. So you can take your phone calls, your conference calls, all those Zoom things that you're doing, and really provide a very, very personal experience. You get a customized office with it, host up to 10 people with screen sharing in your office. Absolutely amazing platform. It is totally a game changer from the Zoom life. You also get a virtual receptionist. So like, how cool is that? Your guests, every time somebody logs into the platform, I have my office on there. Every time somebody logs in, I can say, very confidently, one of the first things out of their mouth is, wow, I've never been on this. This is so cool. And so, I absolutely love that, because it's such a cool experience. Go check them out, coworkhubvirtual.com. Let them know you saw them on the Winning Tactics, and they will hook you up with a free branded background for your office. There's also a really, really cool tour on the website as well. So, and we are back to the important stuff. We've been talking about building relationships. We are going to get ready to shift gears, because I want to dive into this live conversion method, because I am super, super excited about this. So tell us a little bit about the live conversion method, and then we'll dive deep into it.
Yeah, sure. So the live conversion method is actually something that I developed for e-commerce business owners. So I'll tell you a little bit how I got to this point. Actually, it's funny. When we moved over to New York, I actually moved with my husband, my cat, and my co-founder in tow. And so my co-founder, Bonner, and we were actually working on a fashion technology business. And we were we were sort of testing it in Sydney. And then we were like, you know what better place than New York City, which is the apex of fashion and technology, to come and test this over. So we came over. We kind of had an idea of who our target market was, and they were either professionals, like young professionals, or university students or college students. And so as soon as we landed, we kind of hit the pavement and we went to Columbia campus, NYU, Wall Street, and actually just started talking to strangers about this idea. And, again, to your point about like honing in on their problem, just seeing if there was a problem and testing our solution and seeing, is this going to be a fit? Would we actually be able to get product market fit in a way? And what we realized was that, unfortunately, we failed it because, yes, while there was a problem, it wasn't a problem that was probably not that it wasn't big enough, but currently they were happy with how it was being solved. They were happy with the workarounds. And so we were like, you know what, before we invest any more time and money into this, I think we just have to call it quits. So in the meantime, we had been, because it was a two-sided platform, and we were also talking to brands at the same time. And time and time again, the one thing that they all said was acquisition. That was like the main thing that they needed help with. And so we knew this already. Now, just imagine at this time, we kind of like failed our business. We're over here in New York City, and we're like, what are we going to do? Because we kind of had like no real backup plan. It's not like we came over here with corporate jobs or anything like that. So we're like, we don't know what we're going to do. Anyway, I actually incidentally ran across an old friend of mine who I didn't even know had moved to New York City. And she had started a chocolate retail store here. And so she had like brick and mortar stores, and she was actually looking to bring that online. And it was just before COVID hit. So it was actually really good timing. And she was like, look, I know your background with brick and mortar stores. I know what you can do. Do you want to help lead this effort? And I was like, okay, well, I don't really have anything else going on. So sure. And this is what I mean by like, we just fall into these things, right? And so we kind of like, and this is the thing when you can look at it with a completely different perspective. So, this is me, no real e-commerce. I had background in obviously corporate, in banking. I had background in hospitality. I had background in sort of technology, sort of the fashion part, but no real background in like true e-commerce. And so, and I raised that as a concern. I was like, are you sure that, all the imposter syndrome and everything was like, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. She's like, no, you're perfect. You'll see, because basically her thing was like, we do really well in store. Our sales assistants are trained really well to sell. And we want to, and to provide a level of care that people feel when they come into the store, like they're VIPs. And so she was like, I just want to bottle that up somehow and bring it online. So I was like, okay, this is a really cool challenge. How can we do that? So we actually, so it was really great because she got to be a bit of a guinea pig. We got to test a whole range of things. Some didn't work, but then some did. And the things that worked was what eventually became the live conversion method. And so what we had done was we created a Facebook group to begin with. So, and we started, like, they did already have a bit of an audience, so we started inviting everyone into this group, and we gave it an identity. There were the Chocoholics, Chocoholics Anonymous, and so it was a little bit of fun. It was, and then basically we started going live, and we went from, just one kind of almost like educational type lives, and we actually built it into this 5-day festival. Now, that business has a hero product. So apart from selling chocolate, they also sell this hot chocolate making machine. And her thing was like, I want to really focus on selling this product. So I was like, okay, cool. So we built that into a 5-day festival. And the purpose of that 5-day festival was, there was a few things happening, but like the main things that was happening was like, we wanted to show the product in context. So I talk about painting the picture a lot, and that was what we were doing. And so we were using, each night we had someone different in the team that went live, and depending on their context, that's what they would talk about. That's what they would show. And essentially So here, I'm kind of jumping around frameworks, but like, you know, I always talk about mindset, skill set, tool set. And a lot of times we default straight away to tool set. We default straight away to the product. We default straight away to here are the benefits, here are the features, and then now buy. But the starting point really that we should be coming from is mindset. And this comes back to the emotions, evoking emotions, right? It comes back to painting the picture. It comes back to showing them like where it is that people want to get to, where are they now, their before point, and where do they want to go? What is their after point? And really bringing that to life. So that's kind of what we use this time for. So, for example, one night a live would be someone who was just married, like it was just him and his wife. And he would use this hot chocolate making machine to actually make ganache for a dessert. And so it was kind of showing someone in a relationship treating their partner. And then another night we had someone who had young kids and they were using this hot chocolate making machine to make fudgesicles. So again, this was like a family, and you're being like the best, you're being such a fun mom. And, it was like, who doesn't want to be the fun mom, right? And then another night we had someone who was actually a new dad, and it was like me time. It was like spiked hot chocolates, all of that. So so you could see through this like 5-day event, we would actually be painting the picture, and we would be showing these different contexts and going into the mindset and the skill set part without even talking about the product. I mean, the product was there because they were using it. It was, on the kitchen counter and stuff, but they weren't even really talking about it. It was more about who they were, and it was more about what they were doing. And who they were doing it for, and who they were doing it with, rather than the actual product. And so then when we transitioned into the sell, and we made an offer, they did 30K that week, just from the live conversion method. So so that was when we were like, wow, okay, this actually works. Like, people were showing up, people were engaging, people wanted to know more. It was awesome. And I think the great thing about this is that they can, we talk about one-on-one relationships, relationship selling, where, fundamentally people just want to see that you care about them. Now, the great thing about the live conversion method is you're doing it one-to-many, and because you're showing up for your audience. And by the way, like, brands don't do this a lot, especially product-based businesses, which is why this is somewhat rare. So when you actually show up for them, you show up for them live, you're answering their questions, you're calling them out, they're feeling special, they're feeling loved. Like, there is no better feeling that you can create, that VIP experience that you can create, unless they had come into your store and they were like, literally, you were doing that face-to-face. So that was kind of the start of it. Yes.
I love that. I'm going to pause you for just a second, because I think what you just painted is such a cool picture on what sales should be. There are some great brands out there doing this. K Jewelers had the Every Kiss Begins with K that they've been running for years and years and years, and it's all about like the romance side of things. They show jewelry, but they don't talk about the jewelry. They talk about the romance and the mystery and the emotion associated with it. And I think that's so cool. It's a totally different mindset that draws people in a completely different way. I've wrote some scripting for some stuff, and and it's just, that's one of the things. One of the guys I wrote some scripting for literally said, I don't want you to mention, name, or directly infer the product itself. I want you to write a script that sells this, that is it's just totally unique, but doesn't mention the product. And that was challenging, honestly. Like, that was the first really go around that I had like that kind of tactics to work with. But it was once we got done, like, and saw the final product with the video and things like that, it was really, really a cool video.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I think it's important that people realize that you don't have to cram the product all the time, as long as you cram this, as long as you give the vision, the story, and include the product in the journey.
Yes, exactly. Because I think once you start talking about the product, then especially if you start from that point, then that is when people just automatically switch off, right? And I tell my clients and people in my community all the time, which is like, we know this, intuitively we know this, because we ourselves, while a lot of us love buying, we actually hate being sold to. And yet we do that all the time. Like as soon as we become a business owner, as soon as we start, selling products or selling something, like we turn into that person who just sells, because we don't know any other way. And it's not anyone's fault. It's just because obviously we want to make sales because that's the only way we can have a business, but also B, because like we always think logically. I mean, that's the definition of logic, right? It's the thinking part of our brains. And so we never actually realize that we make a lot of these decisions emotionally. Any buying decision we make is actually an emotional one, and we just back it up with logic. But because in our minds, whenever we make a purchase, we are using that logic to rationalize it to ourselves. That's what we think. That's how we think people buy. And we just don't. That's not how we buy. And so it's so important that we actually almost park the logic, park the features and benefits, park the tool set part of it, and really just bring to life the story, the picture, all of that. If we can really just focus on that, I think that really sets a brand up so much for success.
So how would you so obviously the live conversion method is really built around an e-com type of strategy, but I'm assuming over time you've also probably had some service-based businesses that you've worked with as well. So how would you shift that strategy to a service, which is something that's a little less tangible necessarily?
Yeah. I mean, it's actually a lot easier, I would say, for services, just because there's just so much more like that in a way that you can teach, that you can be sharing. Because a lot of times, we're like, oh, we have to we think that we need to hide our best kept secrets, or we can't talk about it or whatever. But like in reality, what people are buying, especially for service, is not the how to. I mean, yes, there is going to be a subset of people who are just like, I just want to know how to do it. But really, if you are charging, and I'm assuming here when we talk about service-based business that they're charging pretty decent, high ticket-ish, they have high ticket offers, then the people that you are targeting actually don't want to do it on their own. They want to outsource it. They want someone to do it for them, or they at least want someone to do it with them. And so I would actually not be worried about like revealing all of your secrets and just giving your best stuff, because they want to know that you have really good stuff, because ultimately that ideal customer, that ideal buyer for someone who has a service is someone who's going to want to outsource that, and they want to trust you. And when you can show up for them in this way, then that immediately builds that trust connection. And also because you know what you're talking about, they're going to be like, you know what, I am going to trust you with my money, my business, whatever it is. So I almost see that this is easier for services.
I love that the know, like, trust. I've also heard it as a buddy of mine, Monty Clark, calls it the T, right? So trust, expertise, and authority. But it's like, it's so foundational. And I think you're right in the fact that giving out information isn't something you should ever be concerned about giving away too much, because Gary Vee sums it up the best. He says, I'm going to give out everything that I could possibly have. Why? Because 99% of people aren't going to do anything with it in the first place. The 1% of people that are going to do something with it aren't my competition, not yet. And by the time they become my competition, I'm going to be so far beyond that, it's not even going to matter. So, I give away all kinds of stuff. Obviously, the show is founded on the principle of, I want experts to be telling other small business owners how they can be better and do better, because I think it's foundationally what makes us strong as business people. But if we can do that from a sales perspective, it just continues to build that confidence that you have in somebody.
100%.
So we are getting towards the end of time here. So I always like to wrap up my show with a final thought, something that our audience can take away and really put into their business from our conversation today. So I leave the floor to you for a final thought.
Oh, wow. Way to put me on the spot.
I like the surprises. What can I say?
Oh gosh, final thoughts. Okay. I think, I've been really, really fascinated with the concept of storytelling. I think, it really brings together all of these disparate, because I'm like, I love frameworks so much. So every time that I come across something fascinating, I'm always just trying to pull things together and have them make sense. And I think that the storytelling aspect, and I'm starting to work on a framework around content storytelling, really brings all of these things around human connection, even like things like tribe building together. And I think I just want to, in the context of storytelling, a lot of people, and I get asked this a lot, they're like, okay, I know, and they hear this all the time, like, I have to tell my story. And they're like, and I'm like, yes, you do have to tell your story, but you have to tell your story in the context of your audience. Because if you're just telling your story, then you just sound kind of conceited, like a little bit self-serving, maybe, like, depending on. And so really what you have to be doing is you have to be relating your story to your audience. What is it about your story that is teaching your audience something, or helping your audience in some way, or showing your audience how you were in their shoes however long ago, and now you've been able, you're ordinary, you're relatable, and now you've become extraordinary because you've been able to, whatever, like you've been able to overcome whatever it is, wherever it is that they are now. And now you're going to help them. You're going to help them through that path, through that same journey. In fact, you're going to shortcut it for them. So I really, in amongst all of this, like talking to the emotions, painting the picture, tell stories. Yes, tell stories about yourself, but always remember that you have to relate it back to your customer. It has to be in your customer's context. So maybe that might be my final thought.
I love it. Stories are so important, but we talk about this in content strategy and marketing too, right? Because everybody says content. And I'm like, yeah, content's only so great as long as it has context around what you're doing in your brand. So it makes perfect sense to me. It is a great final thought. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I guess I work, my business is called Growth Boss. So if you're on socials, you can find me on Instagram, for example, at The Growth Boss. But for anyone who is in e-commerce and looking to grow their business, to find their audience and grow, I actually do a free 3-day challenge pretty much every month. And so if you're interested in doing that, then head over to www.thegrowthboss.com/challenge. It's free, sign up for it, and I'll see you in my community.
Absolutely fantastic. We really appreciate your time today and your knowledge. There's so many nuggets that I am going to be taking and pulling out of this episode and applying even in my own businesses. But as always, I really do appreciate your time. I thank you so much for taking some time today to talk to us. I appreciate the audience, those of you that were on live with us today, or those of you that are catching this in the replay. As always, you can find us on YouTube and all the podcast channels. Make sure you like and follow us on your favorite podcast channel. And as always, thewinningtactics.com. You can find all of our information and previous episodes and blogs and, beyond the show a little bit. So check it out there. We appreciate you. Come back next week at same time, same place. Have a great week, everybody. And we appreciate you joining us.
Well, that wraps up yet another episode of the Winning Tactics Podcast. You can find Adam on both the LinkedIn and Facebook platforms. And to support the show and ensure the success of the podcast, would you kindly consider visiting Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus? We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, from the Winning Tactics Podcast, remember, culture is how your team behaves when no one is looking. Take good care, and thanks for listening.